week's time. Okay, please get started. Okay, some of you may actually have done some work on this already, which is great. If you haven't, I'm not joking, you need to get started. I'm kind of glad that Aldana was able to do this with me, because Aldana actually did this course 3 years ago. Is it 3 years ago?
I think I'm not
3
that
years
old.
ago. She hasn't aged a day. She hasn't aged a day. She looks exactly the same as she did 3 years ago. So Aldana's done this project. What I'm going to get Aldana to do is just give you some of her own insights into what the project was like. So we'll do that today. Okay. So the first thing I'm going to do is switch over to just put the Moodle page up on the screen and just highlight a couple of things. And then I'll run through the detail of what we're doing. Okay, so share the right screen to start with would be good. Okay, so this is the Moodle page that you've all got access to. And the first thing I'm going to highlight is, hang on, let's make sure I start recording from now. Hold on.
Recording in progress.
I'm recording it now. Is normally this session is not going to be recorded. Okay, so I've highlighted those here. Sessions are not normally be recorded. I'm going to record this session because it's the introduction. It means you can go back and check. What did he say again about this? And then we're going to have a session next week, which will be mostly aimed at any kind of initial queries or problems or clarifications that you might need. And we'll probably record that session, but then after that, it's unlikely that we'll record any of them. We might record one for the mock presentations, but it depends. So there won't be many recordings. That's the first thing. The second thing then is that we're going to run a session every Wednesday at 12 o'clock, possibly with one exception, but I'll come back to that again. So basically this time every Wednesday, all right? So kind of parcel that off into your calendar, please, for reasons that will become clear in a minute. All right. So today's session is introductory. What's the project about? Hopefully you already know. The details are up there already about the different kind of set options, or you can do your own proposal. If you have your own proposal, and I'm going to emphasize this again before we finish, you need to submit it by the end of this week. Okay, so if you haven't thought of something already, you've got today to think of it. And then you have to have the proposal submitted by the end of the week. I know, Brendan, I know you sent me something. I think I'd gone back to you during the term. I got your email, I don't know, yesterday or something. I just haven't had the chance to look at it, but I will get back to you on that today. It's probably fine. So most proposals will be fine. 9 times out of 10, there's no issues. To be totally honest with you, the only time we have an issue, there's 2 occasions we have an issue. One is when we think someone has gone totally crazy and really, look, you're never going to be able to do this in 10 weeks. It's a great idea, but it's a master's thesis, so, Or we think, okay, it's a good idea, but you might need to add a little bit more to it to make it enough for the project. And then you have to decide whether or not you can do that. Okay, so that's the purpose of this week. Then next week, am I okay still? Next week, we're going to be asking you to submit a draft plan. Now, there's 1 mark going for the plan, so it's not graded as such, but we'll give you some feedback on it. Now, what I emphasize, I will say this again next week, but what I emphasize is that when you get your feedback, you need to actually go back to your plan and adjust it. And you need to modify your plan as you go a little bit, or tweak it, and make some notes as to why you changed it, what changes you made. It doesn't have to be an extensive essay or anything like that, so that when you make your final submission, you can submit an updated plan along with a short, it might be half a page, it might be a page, explaining what you changed during the plan, why you changed it, and that sort of thing, because that's an important part of your document. And there's 10% of the grade, well, it's -1, so 9%, going for how well you've done that. And it's something that students fall down in every year. They just resubmit the same plan again. It's like, okay, you didn't change it, so you didn't show any evidence of planning. That's 3 out of 10. Yay, well done. And you've lost 5 or 6 marks for no reason. So make sure you get your feedback on your plan that you actually do go back and change it. The weekly reflections bit, as you can see there, is hidden. You can't see that yet, but I'll make that live next week, and I'll explain that during today, but I'll come back to it again next week. Now, the other thing then is these things. So designated supervision sessions. So that's starting 2 weeks from now, right? What we will be doing is we're running those on site. Okay, so we'll be here in the college. So what we want you to do is we want you to come in with your stuff, show us what you've done, and we can have a chat about it. You can ask us some questions. Am I going on the right track? You can have a chat with your friends for an hour and see what they're doing. It'd be great. There's not that many of you. There's only maybe 10 or 11 of you. So it's not going to take us that long to speak to everybody. I would imagine it'll be an hour and a half at most. If you want to go after you've spoken to us, that's fine. But we want you to come in on site. If that's a major issue for you some week, let us know. We might be able to talk to you online. But by and large, we want you to be here on Wednesday at 12 o'clock for an hour. So it's not a big ask. And the reason for doing that is because we've been doing this online for the last 2 sessions, and it's really, really difficult to get a proper sense for what someone is doing, because they're trying to share screens and the share screen doesn't work and it's too slow, and then we can't see it because it's too small, and then we get something submitted at the end and it's like, well, that's not that great really. And it just really gives us a proper opportunity to make sure that you're going in the right track. Okay, so you will see these designated supervision sessions pop up quite a bit. So anywhere where you see a supervision session, that week you should be here, right? So for example, the week of the 4th of July, we don't have a supervision session. We're asking you to submit an interim presentation, so we won't be on site that week. But most of the weeks there's a supervision session. Okay? And then the final deadline is the 13th of August. Okay, now the 13th of August is slightly more than 2 months from now. Okay, so it's not a lot. It's about 12 weeks, I think. Okay, so hence you have started. You started this 15 minutes ago if you haven't already started it. So please don't underestimate that amount of time. I will obviously remind you closer to the time, but just to point out that on the Saturday, the 13th, we're asking you to submit the report document. That's be your actual final report as a document. And then on the Sunday, the next day, we're asking you to submit your like a demonstration recording of what you actually built and an explanation of how you did it. Okay, that's deliberate to allow you, if needed, to have the whole day to practice your demo, do your demo, watch your demo, go, oh my God, that's terrible, I have to do that again. And make sure your the demo's not that long, it's only going to be about 15 minutes, so it's not like you have to do a 3-hour demonstration, but we will want you to record that, okay? And we will come back to that, but just note, this is an important demonstration, okay? So please make sure you do it right. And I'm going to emphasize now, and we'll repeat later, you have to demonstrate your project. It can't be a silent demonstration with the mouse moving and some music playing in the background. Now, you may laugh and smile, but guess what? I've had people doing that before. So please don't do that. That's no use. You should be explaining what you were doing, why you did it, and how you achieved it. All right? And then there'll be a final reflection, which will be a few questions to answer at the end, which will be the deadline for that will be the Monday or something like that, or the Tuesday after you submit everything else. Okay, I'll come back to that one again. So the main deadline basically is the Saturday and the weekend of the 13th and 14th of August. Okay? It is deliberately set up so that you submit the report is done, I can't do anything more with it, I have to focus on my demonstration now. We're not going to give you an extension to the Sunday to do your report. We just need one more day to do the report. No, the whole point is that you can take some time to do the demo properly. What we don't want people doing is frantically trying to finish their report and then getting to 11 o'clock at night and going, now I have to do my demo recording, and making a complete mess of it, because that's not good for you. Okay, so I'm going to stop that share and flick over now to my presentation, which you've all seen before. Okay, so now you've seen this before. So if you have a question as we go, please turn on your mic, say, Ken, hold on a second, you want to ask a question? I'm not necessarily going to see the chat, so just make sure, I might, but just make sure you say it. And likewise, Aldana, if you want to say something at any stage, please do put in. And once I've been through this, we'll have some general questions about what it is you think you want to do. What I will be asking you next week is if there's anyone who wants to do the networking option. Sometimes, so normally in a bigger group, we'd have like 30 students, and we get 3 or 4 who want to do the networking option. So it's possible that there's none of you who want to do the networking option, and you all want to do the other stuff or something else, nothing to do with networking, which is grand. If you want to do the networking option, we just want to know, and I can ask Michael to come along one of the weeks and talk to you about it a bit in a little bit more detail, or give you some guidance on it, because he's more of an expert in that area. Okay, so without further ado, so come on, move.
Hello, Ken. Sorry.
Yes.
So what you're going to explain now is just for the software development?
No, it's both. It's for the project.
Okay.
Yeah, it's just that if you have any technical questions about the networking stuff,
yeah, because I do.
You have a rough idea, but I'm not an expert on it.
Okay.
Does that make sense? Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, so this applies to everybody. All right. So we started 20 minutes ago. And it's individual. So it's an individual project. You can obviously, there's nothing wrong with talking to the people in your class. And if you're having a problem with something, finding out, did they have a similar problem and how do they solve it? Oh God, why didn't I think of that? That's perfectly fine. And likewise, as Aldana will tell you later on, coming in and saying, I can't figure this out. And someone says, oh, why didn't you think of doing it this way? I still remember that with the session level variables. Yeah. It's so obvious when you hear it, of course, and then away you go, problem solved, right? So that's perfectly fine, but you've got to do the work yourself. This is not going to be a class, ever. We are not going to put notes up and start talking about, linking to a database or anything like that. No, this is purely just for us to see what you're doing and you to get some guidance on whether you're going in the right direction or not. Okay, so not classes. Please do research, and it is perfectly good to cite online research and wrong with that. Just watch out for what I call, it's like copy and paste citing, where people will find something really good in an article or online, copy it and then change some of the words. That gets flagged up by the plagiarism detector, and depending on how well or badly you've done it, it's not great work. So it's also not particularly fair. So try and, if you're reading something and you think, oh, that's really good, I like that, try and write it in your own words. It's perfectly reasonable to take a short quote. A line or two is a good guide as much as you could do. And try to stick to that. If you find something longer than that you think, oh, this is so brilliant, I really have to quote it, but it's 5 or 6 lines, you will get away with that, that's fine, but you can't do that all the time. You might get away with it once. Okay? Even if you've cited it, it's not fair to just quote things all the time. So, what do you have to do? You've got to build something. Okay? We have created 2, let's call them set briefs, one of which is a software development one, and one of which is a networking one, which you've seen before. You can pick one of those, and that's absolutely fine. There's nothing wrong with that. In fact, every year, most people will do one of the set briefs. Fair enough? Okay. Now, what I will say is, in a lot of cases, the people who get the really, really top marks are ones who've created their own idea and they've gone and done something unusual. Okay, so it can be difficult to get a mark in the 70s or 80s if you're doing the set brief, because we know it so well and we've all seen it before. But there's nothing wrong with doing the set brief, and it's fine. And if you do it very well, then you can get a good score. Or you can come up with your own idea. And that's also perfectly fine. All right. If you have your own idea, you need to submit it to the Moodle uploader by the end of this week. Brendan, you've already sent me something by email, so you don't need to upload it again. But anybody else, please use the Moodle uploader. And what we want to know is, what exactly are you going to try to do? So what sort of functionality are you providing? And what technologies do you plan to use? A couple of reasons for that. So for example, we had, I think I said this to you before, we had a student with the last group or the group before last, I can't remember which group it was, who wanted to use the IBM Watson system to build an AI chatbot. And we were like, okay, that's going to be tricky. Are you sure? And he was, oh yeah, definitely. I've used it before and I've seen it. And okay, fair enough. And 6 weeks later, he couldn't get it to work and he changed and decided to use one of the set briefs. So, it's what we want to just make sure that you're not trying to do. So if you come and say, well, I'm going to use Android Studio, we might go, well, did you do Android Studio in class? Do you know Android Studio? Because, oh, no, I have to learn it. Right. Have you factored that into your planning? How much time is it going to take you to learn Android Studio? Or Windows Server 2000 or something, whatever it is. Do you know how to use that? Have you used that before? I'm going to do this in Python. Oh, right. Have you used Python before? You're going to learn Python? Have you thought about that? Now, we're not going to stop you, because actually that's good. It's great that we want to see that someone's, no, I'm going to learn Python. I'm going to do this in Python. I'm going to think, oh, great. You're getting a new skill. Ooh, challenge. That's giving you a value to your project. But we want to make sure that you have actually thought that through and that you factor that into your planning so that you don't turn around in the middle of July and go, oh, I can't get this finished because you haven't got enough time. Okay? So, in general terms, the software development option, which I know you've seen, is basically what we want is a web front end with a database backend, right? Or a mobile front end with a database backend, right? As a general guide, it should be able to store and update details of a customer. It might not necessarily have to be a customer, but some people who interact with the front end, and then the set one includes some sort of date functionality. So you have to, for example, you have to book your car in for a service, right? Now you might not be doing book your car in for a service. You could be booking a delivery or booking a visit to the spa, or booking a hairdressing appointment, or something else, that's fine. If you're not doing something with dates, then you need to be able to say, well, I'm not using dates, but this is what I'm doing instead, and this is why it's difficult, right? Now, also there's some elements of pricing with the ability to produce an invoice. It doesn't have to do payment. So you might say, well, I'm not doing the dates, but I am going to do the payment. Okay, well, that's reasonable enough because that's an extra challenge. So, what are you doing to give it the same challenge as what we've set you? All right. Similarly, for the networking option, if you're thinking of doing the networking option, you have to do a network design, which is, well, we've said a packet tracer because it's open source and they want you to use open source software, and also a separate proof of concept virtualization using some sort of virtualization software. Okay. And one of the things that's in the predefined spec is that this company, this made-up company, it's a pharmaceutical company, but it doesn't matter. You can make it an accounting company if you really wanted to, has one department or division that has to be kept separate for some reason, and that other employees shouldn't be able to access the information from that particular, I think it was the R&D department, right? For particular security reasons, and you had to provide internet access and all this. So there's a lot of things you're supposed to be able to, like VoIP and all this. So if you wanted to do your own plan and not use the set plan, you need to be able to show that it's equivalent to what we've set you. Okay. And we have had people who've done their own networking plan. There was a guy a couple of years ago whose family ran a business somewhere in, I think it wasn't Afghanistan, Azerbaijan, I think, or something like that. It was somewhere that part of the world. And they had several premises around the country. So that was his departments, if you like. And that's what he did for his project, because he felt it was relevant. He could kind of do it for his dad, kind of thing. So if you have a family member who maybe is running a small business and needs some sort of web technology, that could inspire you to go, oh, actually, I could build a web front end for them and allow them to do ordering or whatever. That might be, yeah. So if it's something that's interesting to you or something that's relevant to you, then by all means do that. Okay, so I forgot to change this December to January thing. Obviously, it's not running December to January. It's running from now until August. There will be a QA session after the deadline. So we want you to do your demo recording. We'll watch that beforehand. And then we'll bring you in, or when I say bring you in, we might do it online, but we'll have a short 10-minute QA session where we all talk to you about your project, get you to tell us a bit about it, make sure that you actually do it yourself, that sort of thing. Other than that, there are a couple of small interim submissions along the way. For example, the project plan that we're going to get you to submit next week, and a draft chapter 1. They are done for formative feedback only. They're not graded. There's a couple of marks given to incentivize you to actually do it, because otherwise nobody does it. And then that allows us then to be able to give you some feedback, and you just go, oh, right, I forgot about that, or I didn't think about that, whatever, right? Okay, and then there's components we go along. So here we go along the way. So some of the weeks have been highlighted in Moodle already, but here we go, right? So the weekly submission Google form will go live next week. You'll start doing that next week. And what we're going to ask you to do is submit a Google form every week for the whole project, right? Marcella, you'll be doing something similar. It'll just be a slightly different form if you're doing the other option, okay? That's important that you do that. We're not going to be reminding you every week. We're not going to be saying, hey, Carlos, did you do this mission this week? No, it's up to you to remember. So my recommendation will be, and I'll say this again next week, is put a reminder on your phone. Pick a time of the week that suits you. Say, right, well, it suits me to do it on Thursday at 8 o'clock because I'm not working, I'll be at home. Put a reminder on your phone. The reminder goes off, oh, you have to do that. It'll take you maybe 10 minutes to do each week. And what we're asking you to do that, and we're giving you 10% of marks for that. So it's not just have you done it every week, but have you actually reflected and answered the questions with more than just yes. So have you actually reflected on what you're doing? And if you do that well, it's actually very possible to get 7 or 8 out of 10. 9 or 10 out of 10 is hard. But if you don't do it, or you kind of just do a token effort of, oh yeah, look, I'll fill in the form, yes, 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 tick box, grand, then you might get 4 out of 10. Now, that's 3 marks you've left behind for no reason. If you forget to do it at all, or you only do it once or every now and then, you might only get 1 out of 10 or 2 out of 10. And now you've left 5 or 6 marks behind. That might not seem like a lot, but if you end up with 44 and realize, oh, I could have got more marks for the week. If I'd only done the weekly reflections, I could have got 50. Then it becomes something silly that you forgot about. And every year, now you have a small group, so maybe it won't apply to you, but every year so far, there's been at least 3 or 4 people who have said, oh, look, they could have got a better grade if they'd only done the weekly reflections properly. So please make sure you do those. The second thing is we've got an interim presentation, which will be, I think it's around week 5 or week 6. 5-minute, here's what I've done so far, here's what I'm doing, presentation that you're going to record for us. And we look at them in class and we give you some quick feedback just to make sure that it's also a practice for your final piece of work, although I know you've done recorded stuff for me anyway, so hopefully you know how to do that. There is 10% for planning. Now that'll be effectively in your final report. One of those marks is for submitting your draft plan. So what I want to see, what Adana wants to see, is that you've taken the draft plan and when you've resubmitted it, it's not the same plan. Okay, and that you've thought, and you can show why you changed it. I don't want to know what a Gantt chart is. I know what that is. I'm saying that now because when you look at sample reports, they'll all have these big long explanations of why Gantt charts are brilliant, and I'm like, oh God, please don't do that. What I want to know is, what we want to see is that you've thought about your project and you've thought about how you planned it and why you had to change it and so you encountered some problems and therefore this happened. Okay. The designated supervision sessions, there is a reason to come. So what we want you to do is make sure you've attended 5 of them. So do you need to come every week? No, right? But come to 5 of them. Show us that you've done something, that you've made some progress. What have you done so far? And there's 10 marks going for that. So you can divide it up. It's roughly speaking 2 marks per week for, hey, I've done something. So if you're coming along and say, well, I didn't really do very much and I was busy with something else. Okay, but you can't get that week back. So you still got the same deadline. So it's just to try and keep you push, nudge, keep going. And there is a value to that. All right. So please make sure you engage. Again, every year we get somebody who doesn't really come along or doesn't really make a lot of progress and then suddenly submit something at the end and they kind of leave those 10 marks behind. It's okay, 1 out of 10. And they haven't done the reflective journal, it's 1 out of 10 there, and suddenly that's 20 marks they've left behind. And then suddenly it's very difficult to pass, so don't ignore these things. The final report, obviously that's a big deal, that's worth 25%. You'll be submitting that at the end. The final thing that you built, your artifact, whether that's a mobile app or a web app or a network design, whatever it is you've done, that be submitted at the end. That's why the demo is so important, because the demo is showing off that. So there's 30% going for your artifact and your demo. The QA session itself, there's only 5 marks going for that. But I will put in the little warning there that if you miss the QA session, you're not going to get any mark at all. We just won't give you a mark at all for the project until you've done a QA session. And if you turn up to the QA session and can't answer questions about your own project, then we'll fail you. Okay? Because that's not good. So the QA session is important. And then there's a final reflection at the end, which isn't a big deal. It's, I think, 3 questions that we want you to answer. How did you do what do you feel about the project? What would you change? What advice would you give to the next group? That kind of thing. It's meant to be, so that it's deliberately left until after the final submission so that you can actually reflect on the whole process. And again, there's 5 going for that. And usually every year we have someone who forgets to do it and misses that 5%. But most people will do it. And it's actually very easy to get kind of 3 or 4 out of 5. And again, why not get 3 or 4 marks? You might as well do it. It's extra 3 marks, extra 4 marks. Easy to do. Okay. Hopefully that makes sense so far. If it's not already obvious, our expectation is that you're doing most of the work here. We're not doing the work for you. What we will do is, tell you, okay, I think you're going, that's not enough, or, well, did you think about doing this instead? Give you some general feedback. If you hear us saying a lot, okay, you really need to work some more here, what that means is you really need to work some more. It's not a code for, that's great. So we will, if we think you're doing well, we'll tell you, say, oh, that's great work, keep going, right? And if you keep hearing that, that's good. That's a good sign. It means you're probably on track to a pass, and what we're trying to do is get you to get 50 or 60 or 70. We're going to see if we can get your mark higher. What we don't want people doing is, oh, I just got to 40. I'll take a rest now. We want to keep people going and trying as many marks as they can. We will make suggestions. How do I put this nicely? Some of them will be strong suggestions. I strongly recommend. And when you hear us saying those kind of things, you really need to think about that. But in a lot of cases, it'll just be a suggestion. We might just have an idea. Hey, did you think about this? Oh, actually, I didn't think about that. No, that's a crap idea. I won't do it. That's fine. You don't have to follow all of our suggestions. Some literally, and I'm not joking, they will literally be moments of inspiration. You're saying something, I'm like, oh, did you think about doing that? I haven't even thought about it before. I just thought about it right now. And you might go, oh, that's a great idea, and then think of it. Or you might think, well, that's a really good idea, Ken, but it's going to take me 6 weeks, so nah, I'm not going to do that. And that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. They are suggestions. So, stop share. Shoot. Someone say something.
So, to submit my own proposed project, the deadline is 11th of June, right?
This weekend, yeah.
So, I need to submit the proposal, what I want to do to develop my own proposal. And then
maybe 2 pages at most, Kelson.
2 pages.
Right. So what I want you to do is describe really briefly, maybe 5 or 6 lines, what you're trying to do, outline of what it is. Mm-hmm. And the main part should be what functionality are you going to provide and what technologies are you going to use. Fair enough?
Fair enough. It can be only software developed. I'm not planning to do anything web, but everything, Java and database and stuff like that. It's there, okay?
You can do anything at all. There is no limit whatsoever.
Mm-hmm.
Right? You can decide what you want to do.
Yeah.
And then we'll take a look at it, and we might come back to you with a question and go, or next week we might talk to you and go, not really sure what you meant here. Or we might say, oh, that's fine. Or we could come back and go, look, it's a good idea, but it's really not enough. and you need to add some more work to it to make it enough for a project. But there's no restriction. You can do anything you want. Okay? If you are doing something that's very similar to the Jer's Garage or the Dublin Pharmaceutical, then really all you need to do is send me like 10 lines saying, look, I'm going to do the Jer's Garage, except mine is going to be a cake shop where someone can order a cake for collection on a particular day. And I'll just go, that's fine. Right?
Yes.
So that's no problem at all. If it's very, very similar to the Jer's Garage, you can take it for granted that it'll be approved. We just want to make sure that you have actually got the idea. So don't assume, oh, no, I'm doing a cake shop. And then you submit something and we go, where's the date booking? Oh, I didn't do a date booking for a cake shop. Well, that's no good. So we just need to make sure that you are staying roughly within the parameters of the spec. Also, and you might remember this from when I looked at the spec originally, we're not requiring you to host it in the cloud. That's not a minimum requirement, right? If you want to go and host in the cloud, bonus, right? So, yeah, hey, look, I'm going to go and host in the cloud. Brilliant. Now, straight away, you've like added 10 marks straight away, almost, assuming you get it working right, obviously. So you can go, great. So that's if you want to be able to get a distinction mark, anything over 70, you've got to be able to add something extra that we haven't specified. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
So if you do the Jer's Garage and the website is local on your system and it works perfectly and I can register my car and book my car in for a service and it gives me the price afterwards and it works very well and it's designed very well and it looks really nice and cool and it's nice images and it's nice and neat, 60%. Okay? If you want to get 70%, it has to be hosted, or you have to have done the payment, or you have to, so there has to be something extra. Fair enough, there has to be some extra value in there.
Nice.
All right. And the same would be, I heard Darlington mention the networking there, so you might be thinking about doing the networking thing.
Yeah.
So it's the same problem for the networking thing. The spec you've been given, if you do all those bits and you do them really well, then you're in the 60s somewhere. You want to get in the 70s somewhere, you got to think of something that's not there, or do it in a very unusually technical way. So do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
So you really got to think about it. So what we're trying to do there is if you want to get a distinction, we want to see that you've thought about it outside the box a bit and you go, okay, this is what I'm going to do. What I will add there is that if you decide to use technology that we haven't taught you,
Okay.
right, then that's in and of itself an extra value. So if you're coming back to us and say, oh, I'm using
On a framework, for example, like no frameworks.
Maybe possibly the difficulty. There's nothing wrong with using frameworks, Calvin. Okay, the thing with frameworks is the framework will do a lot of the work for you. So actually, what with framework, we'll come back to you and go say, okay, so what did you do here? How much of this is from the template, and how much did you do? So, oh right, well it's mostly from the template. I did about 20%. Okay, that's
Also,
not good.
sorry, to add there, just guys, make sure if you decide to use another technology that you haven't learned during the course or during the program, right? Just make sure to explain why you decided to go for that technology, why you decided to use that technology over another one that you studied during the higher diploma. Because, well, I think, I don't know if you agree, but most of the technologies that we covered during the higher diploma, you should be able to use it and complete these projects perfectly fine. Of course, as Ken mentioned before, it is good from you to add that extra challenge where you can study another technology and add extra value. But sometimes, we've seen students previously that they decided to study a particular technology that didn't really add any extra value to the project because it did exactly the same as all the technologies that we covered. And then they took loads of time to study that, and they couldn't even finish their project. So their project was very basic, and just because they use another technology. So just be careful there. As I always say in our classes, like those are all your own decisions, and just make sure that you analyze that before going for another technology just because. Okay, there is plenty of technologies that you can use. There is loads of things that you can study and apply, but sometimes is it worth it? Like, is it something that it will add something to your project or not? You know, it's not just about listing technologies, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Can I ask 2 quick questions on the networking? I'm a little bit confused about the custom infranet portal design. On the infranet
Yeah.
portal
So,
design.
well, an intranet, Darrington,
Infra-
hopefully you know,
infranet.
is basically just it's just a website,
Yeah.
but it's only used internally in the company.
Yeah. Is the custom that is confusing me?
Yeah. So you're supposed to design a website for the company basically that they use internally.
Okay.
That's,
Which means
so-
which means the networking part is gonna be like designing a website and at the same time doing the
but
network.
the intranet design is part of the requirement, and it just depends on how well you've done that then and how much you've put into it. So you could have a very basic one that is there and doesn't do a lot, and that ticks the box. But if you do a really detailed one that's more, I don't know what the right word is, more extravagant, or, you know, oh wow, this is really cool, then that's worth more value. But that takes more time to do, and so that's the sort of thing that separates, you know, the 60s from the 70s. You know, it's how much is involved in doing it. Does that make sense?
Yeah. Then the other one, all divisions will require an external internet connection. Is it just one internet connection, or each of the departments like the ROD, research and development, the sales and marketing, they will have their own internet connection?
That's one of those things, Darlington, that you get to decide, right? So you've been given the requirement from the business, and then you can decide how best to fill that requirement.
Okay.
And you have to, you know, so is it secure and is it robust and all those things that you're supposed to have with good networks?
Yeah.
So if you have one connection, then the first question we ask you is, okay, what happens if that connection goes down? And you sit there and go, oh, right. I didn't think of that.
Maybe for the external.
So, okay. So, well, right. How am I so you need to think about things like, if you're doing a network plan, you need to think about what's a good fault tolerant design.
Okay. Yeah.
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 So a fault, remember, fault tolerant.
Tolerance.
What does fault tolerant means? Oh, the router just failed,
Yeah.
or the access point has gone down. What do we do?
Yeah.
Right? Oh, come back next week. We'll have it fixed by then. No. That's not going to work. There has to be some other way of doing it. Fair enough. So that's you. But you need to think about how you're going to achieve that. And don't get me wrong.
It's
okay?
the external design that is internet that is confusing me, because for the internal design, I've already thought about a way of dividing it. But is that external? If I have to have more than one external internet connection, or I have to have maybe like 2 internet router or 3 internet router.
But it's not about what you have to have, Darlington.
Yeah.
It's about what you decide you're going to do.
Okay.
And why you decided to do it that way.
Okay.
Right? And this will apply to everybody, by the way. I hope everyone's listening. This is important. This is kind of what Aldana was saying. At each point along the step, you're going to have a decision to make, right? And you're going to, I guarantee you're going to come to a session and go, can I do this? And we're going to go, yeah, of course. And then we'll say, but what we want you to do is explain why you did it that way and how you did it, right? And then you go, oh, right, I don't really know why. I saw it on a forum somewhere. Okay, well then go and think about it yourself and come up with a reason. Why did you do it that way? And that applies whether it's networking or your own web app or your mobile app. At each stage of the process, there'll be some decision you've made about the design of your web page or the functionality that you're adding in. And I'm using Java, and this is the way I programmed it. Well, why did you do it that way? Is there a reason that you did that? So it's the reasons we're looking for. That it's the explanation of why you did it that way. And that could just be a couple of lines every now and then. It doesn't have to be pages and pages. But if you're just submitting a report that's a load of screenshots and nothing explained, that's not good. Okay, here's my web page. Here's my login page. Here's my customer can select a date page. That's nice. Why did you do it that way?
Yeah, that's on the final report. Okay. Yeah, on the final report.
Yeah, and it's the same for network design. So you'll have a network design.
Yeah.
Right, if you're doing the networking.
Yeah.
And the question, well, why did you design it that way?
Okay.
Can you explain it? Can you explain why you designed your network? Yeah, we want to see. Okay, I've configured the router using this. Great, that's fantastic. Yeah, why did you do that? So. Think about the why, basically.
Okay.
Fair enough?
Yeah. Sorry.
Yes.
Carlos?
Yeah.
Yep. I just have a question about the coding. If I need to explain what sort of code I use it or why need I to do like that? The report.
When you say what sort of code, what do you mean?
Like a bubble sorting.
Oh, I understand. Not necessarily. No, if you are doing searching, for example, in your and you've used a searching algorithm, and you've decided to use linear search, what was there a better alternative that you could? So we might be sitting there thinking, why did you do a linear search? That doesn't really make any sense. He should have used something else, right? Like a binary search or something. And then we might go, well, why did you use linear search? And you may have used it because that's the one I know, and I didn't really understand the other one.
Okay.
And that's not bad as a reason, but that's like, okay, so that wasn't the best option, really. So he's kind of used it because he kind of felt that he had to. He didn't really have any choices. So that's fine, but just explain that and say, look, I'm using a linear search here because this is the one that I know. And if you can say that, look, I know this other one would be better, and here's why it would be better, but I just can't get it to work. That's fine. Fair enough. So you're not going to fail on details like that. It's about what you've done, why you've done it. It's the process. Let me put it this way. If you get to the end and your thing is not working at all, that doesn't mean you failed. Okay? It might mean that you failed, but what we want to see is what was the process? It could be not working because of some nightmare problem you encountered right at the end that you just couldn't solve. Like the day before, it's like 4 days before the deadline, oh God, and you're searching in Stack Overflow and you're everywhere and you can't figure it out. That's just not working. But that's not necessarily, okay, your report is explaining things. Okay, your demo is not great because the thing's not working. You're just really showing us screenshots of your code. But is there enough there for us to give you a pass? Possibly. Okay. And likewise, just because someone can demonstrate something that looks really amazing doesn't make it brilliant. It could actually be very simple because they've used a framework with a template that's built the whole thing for them, and they've just gone click, 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 Now, that'll be obvious. Trust me. We'll see that straight away. Did you use a framework for this? And again, well, it might be enough there to give you a pass, but there might not be enough there to give you a pass. What did you add to it? Okay, so if you're using a framework, that's fine. Why did you choose that framework? What did you do with it? How much did you add to the template? Fair enough? That's what we want to see. Okay?
Ken, another thing. Is there a way maybe you can show us past demo of the networking, like the networking bit? Because I just want to know
what we've done on the Moodle page, Darlington, is there is a kind of an extract from a sample report up on the.
Yeah, I've seen that. It has. I've seen that.
That's the best I can do. Unfortunately, because everyone has done the actual set thing, I can't give you a whole report because then you'd have the answer.
Yeah, because you know what I'm asking. Like our CA, the one we did with you on strategic business, we did something and recorded it, and we are basically looking at the slide, just moving the slide and explaining it. Mm-hmm. Is that how the network is going to look when we finish the project? Is that kind of
yes, in most cases that's what it looks like, Darlington. So that normally what we get is we get a packet tracer file, right?
Okay.
That has the network design in it.
Okay.
You know what I mean? Packet tracer file.
Tracer,
and then what people will do is they'll have that packet tracer file open on their screen.
Okay.
And they'll show the messages going between different parts of the network, and they'll explain how they configure the routers and how they did the different thing, the VoIP and the different bits, right?
Okay.
And then there'll be the virtualization piece, which they'll have done using something else.
Open source.
Now, that can vary from person to person. Not everyone does it. To be honest with you, the intranet bit tends to get left out quite a lot.
Yeah,
there's not that many people who've done a good intranet bit. I remember one from I think it's a year or two ago now, which was just whoa. This person's really hit everything. So you can do it, but it just depends on how much time you put into it and how good you are at the packet tracer stuff, basically. Okay, so can I just get a rough show of hands? Who thinks right now that they might want to do the networking thing? Put your hand up on the emojis. Nobody?
Darlington.
Oh, Darlington says, okay. I was wondering, maybe Darlington's decided, maybe I scared him off.
That's the only thing I think.
Okay, that's fine. That's fine. I'll see if I can get Mike to give you a bit of time every couple of weeks, Darlington. He might be able to help you out a bit and you steer on the technical stuff.
Yeah, thanks.
Okay. Now, Aldana, if you don't mind, I'll hand over to you now and stop talking. I've talked enough. And get you to give them some insight into. Aldana's report is actually on the Moodle page. That's one of the ones that's up there. You can see her report.
I've seen it.
You can grade it.
We've seen
it. You want to grade it?
Don't grade it, please.
Yours is the greatest.
I always say this. I just hope Ken and all the lecturers don't go back to it again, because they will find all the flaws. I was just writing down a few tips that I like to share with you guys. I've been saying a few of these things before during the class. I've been warning you about the final project, as probably Ken did as well. So you have all the warnings, right? Maybe we wanted to scare you a little bit and see if that helps for you to get started. But I was just writing down a few tips based on my own experience as a student, and based on my experience running these supervision sessions and with Ken for I don't know how many times we did it already, but based on what I can see from other students. Okay, so one of the tips that I don't have a beautiful slides as Ken had, but I have the tips here based on what we were just talking. One of my first tips is the planning and how important the planning is. Okay, so, and this is not only because you need to submit an initial plan and then we will grade it and we'll see if it's good or not. The planning, I believe that's what it helped me the most to go through these projects. Yes, of course, we are going to evaluate and grade you on your technical skills, but you're going to develop a full stack project. So that also represents that you need to show kind of a planning or managing skills. Okay, so the planning part, it is very important. In particular for those that, because I've been there, so I know how it is, in particular for those that are international students, if you're working, you all know that summer is the time where you can actually work full time. So you will have loads of hours, okay? So here just, when I was doing the final project, this same final project, I was also an international student. I was working full time at that time, and I was working in 2 different jobs, right, at the same time. So I had to be very careful with the planning. And I think it is also important to give yourself, I think it is also important to give yourself at least a day where you can rest, because that was one of my mistakes. I was all the time trying to do something, and by the end of the project, I was literally very tired, burned out. So I think it is very important that you give yourself some time to rest and then just a fresh start. But yes, I think the planning, it is one of the most important parts to be able to cover all the different bits in this project. So if you can take some time to review how much time you have available by week to actually work on your project, make sure to include in that planning, if you need to study, like maybe some research on different technologies, that's a good thing that you can add in your planning. If some of those technologies are things that you need to study, that's something that you need to add in your plan, because that's time consuming. And also make sure to add some time in your planning for your report. The report, if I'm not mistaken here, has nearly the same amount of marks than the artifacts.
Yeah, that's about right. It's 25% for the report and 30% for the artifact. So they're pretty much the same.
Yeah.
That's a really good point. A lot of people leave the report till kind of the end and then have a bad report.
That's very bad idea, because as we were saying before with Ken, for us, it's also important that you can justify your decisions. And the place where you are going to justify all your design decisions or your challenges that you face and how you overcome them, that's going to go on your report. So if you leave that for the end, you will forget loads of things that were in the middle, like they were happening in the middle. And as usually said on all the CAs, we just grade the final result. Okay, so well, it's not that we just grade the final result, but we have a final result. So if you don't put all the challenges that you overcome, or if you don't put all the effort that you put to get or to achieve your final project on your report, that's something that we cannot see. So if you don't put that effort on your report, it's very difficult for us to see all your hard work during the final projects, during this summer project. Okay, so I think the planning, it is very important. Then about once you decide what's your final project about, if you decide to do something different, or even if you decide to do some of the suggested projects, just make sure you know exactly what are the main requirements. Okay, so it is a big project. So, and there is always something that you can add. There is always something that you can improve. But just make sure that you know what are your main requirements, what is your goal, and try to achieve those, right? And then you can keep working on the small details or on the smaller requirements, right? Because one of the examples that Ken gave before, probably you have a beautiful website and then we click and nothing happens, right? So maybe you spend a lot of time trying to design a great website, but that website is not it's not doing anything. It's not connected to a database. It's not saving information. So make sure you know what are the main requirements and focus on those first, because again, it is a big project and every single bit takes a lot of time. Okay, so and you have loads of different angles to tackle here. So of course, it is good to be ambitious if you want to add loads of requirements and different functionalities. That's great, but you need to be realistic as well. You have a timeline, so just make sure that you achieve those things in this framework, like timeline framework, okay? The other tip is make sure to have a backup, like always save your project. If you have different versions, make sure you have them saved. I remember one day before my submission, I broke my code so awfully at 12 in the night or something like that. And I was like, but I had a backup, but it was a little bit like it wasn't the updated version. You know what I mean? So I had to rebuild a few things the day before. So make sure you have a backup, and if you are going to make some changes, like major changes, and your version is already working or have some things working, just make sure that's, I don't know, version 1, and then you keep moving and you save the other one as version 2, and you keep moving and so on. Of course, you can do this in different ways. It's up to you. If you want to use GitHub or whatever, it is always up to you what's the best idea, but make sure to save those different versions as you go, okay? Also, I think we had a few students, Ken, I don't know, I feel I remember that some students by the end of the project, their laptop was broken, they couldn't use their laptop, and their project was just there, so it was very difficult for them to recover that. So please make sure that you have an external backup as well. And the other thing, I was just thinking, if I need to go back in time and start my project, if I would do something differently, that would be just just get started. And this is not because Ken didn't say that, because all the lectures has said that several times, and we have already said that to you several times, but I don't know why sometimes we just don't start early enough.
Yeah, well, interestingly, one of the questions you'd be asked in the final reflection is, what advice would you give to and I'd say like 7 out of 10 of the students who answer that question go, I tell them to get started earlier.
Yeah. And there is always, there is, as I say, there is so many different angles that you need to tackle for this project, that there is always something that you can do, okay? So busy yourself, like just make sure some days maybe you're stuck with some code and you sit there and you try to fix it and there is no way you can do it. Okay, well, maybe that day is not the day that you can keep moving in the coding part, but then you can't improve other things, like you can go on your report and see if you can do some things on your report, or maybe think on your presentation, or maybe your database design, or so you have several things that you can work at the same time. Okay, so if at some stage you feel a little bit lost and you don't really know how to start, there is always something that you can start with. Okay, again, I feel like this time is perfect to do some research if you're planning to do another technology, but just put a time limit to do that, because you might find yourself researching and trying to study a lot before starting, and that's sometimes you reach the point where you are wasting your time actually. Okay, so make sure to think of your planning, follow the plan, and just try to avoid wasting time on things that it won't improve your project or it won't help you to finish your project. Okay. So those are basically my main tips. But of course, I'm open to answer any question that you might have.
So look, guys, what we discover every year is that after the first session, there's an awful lot of.
Sorry.
So it's perfectly normal if you're sitting there going, that's perfectly normal. And next week's session, what I would be looking for you to do is make a list of questions that you want to ask or you want to have answered. Someone else might ask the same question. You might go, oh, great, that was the one I had to answer. Great, tick, done. But bring some questions next week. That's what we want you to do. If you have more questions now, obviously we'll answer them. We've got another 10 minutes or so. But don't feel, oh, I can't think of any questions right now. Oh no, what am I going to do? So that's fine. But please start. All right. As Aldana mentioned, it's not realistic for you to assume that you're going to be able to do this every day or you're going to have time to do it every day, because that's just not going to happen. Okay. You're going to get to Friday or Sunday and you're just going to go, I can't do anything today. And that's fine. That's perfectly normal. Happens to me all the time. I've still got some corrections to do that I'm just. Every time I sit in front of them, it's like, no, I can't do it now. So it's perfectly normal to have that reaction, but you need to build that into your thinking for your planning. Don't sit down and go, right, well, I've got 7 days every week and I can do 3 hours every day, because that's just not going to happen. You need to plan realistically, okay? And think about your functionality. And as I mentioned the functionality, look at what is kind of what you might call the essential functionality. Like if I don't get this to work, the whole thing is a waste of time. So can the user log in? Can I add someone to the database? Right. Now the fancier stuff, like can I make sure that they can't book on a Sunday, for example? Oh, that's a bit fancy now. That's a bit more hard work involved in that. I'll try and do that, but I'm going to make sure that I can actually put the bloody calendar on the website in the first place, right? There's no point in spending 3 weeks trying to figure out how to do a complicated restriction and then discovering that you don't have a website built. And go, oh crap, now I'm behind the eight. So do the fundamentals first, right? You are going to need to have some kind of design diagrams. I would encourage you to use things like wireframes if you're doing a website or a mobile app. Have a few wireframes. You don't have to have a wireframe for every page. Have a few wireframes as samples. If you're doing a database, you should have some sort of ERD, some sort of entity relationship diagram. Okay, maybe a class diagram as well. All right. You might want to do some other diagramming type tools like use cases and stuff like that. That's also fine. But when you're doing an ER diagram, make sure you've explained it a little bit. So every time you get someone who puts their ER diagram on the page, this is my ER diagram. It shows the database and the tables. Okay, I know that. But how did you get to there? Why did you design it that way? So just explain a little bit. And it could just be 4 or 5 lines. It could be half a page. It doesn't have to be a 6-page explanation. But if you have no explanation, That's nice. The other thing I will say is if you are looking at the sample reports, which I would encourage you to do if you haven't already done it, make sure you have a look at sample reports. You may have this reaction of, what? I have to write 70,000 pages? No, you don't. So like some of yes, we have deliberately picked, they're all people who got distinctions, I'm pretty sure, including Aldana's, just about, because she's so nice. So
I was just going through my report. I was like, oh, why did I do that? I don't like that. You know, like.
I know, never look back at your own work.
Yeah, no, I could find a few things there that.
So have a look at them and see what they've done, the kind of diagramming that they've done. But if you look at it properly, you'll see that actually they've explained things as they've gone along. And you might read it and go, oh, they could explain that a little better. Of course they could. That's why they didn't get 100, okay? But they've explained it. The poor ones, the ones who struggle, have lots of screenshots. Screenshot, and no text. Or very little text. That's not good. So please don't submit a report that's just loads of screenshots. You need to explain what you've done, okay? There is a structure there for you that you can look at. You don't have to follow that structure exactly. You can come up with your own structure, that's fine. It is normal to kind of follow this was the functionality I've decided on, this is how I've designed it, this is how I built it, and this is how I've tested it. All right? If you all want to make a little note now, don't forget the testing. It's the most common thing for people to forget. They don't either have no testing section at all, or they've got like a paragraph on I tested it. It worked.
So to put in the reports all the diagrams and also the how to use the system.
Now that's a good question, Kelsom. You can have a user manual type thing. That would be more like an appendix to your report. That's fine. Don't overkill that. Okay, because you could write a 60-page user manual if you really wanted to, right? That's not necessary. If you want to do kind of a user manual type thing, then just keep it simple. And that's a good thing to have, but don't overdo it because it's not worth thousands of marks. All right. But if you want to have something like that, that's fine. What I meant was, what tends to happen a lot is people will include a screenshot of every single page of their website. And they've explained nothing. Just here's the login page where the user logs in. Here's the page where you register your vehicle. Here's the page where you enter your date. Here's the page where you get your invoice. And nothing's explained. Okay? You don't have to include your code in your report. I would encourage you to include, small fragments, particularly anything that you thought was particularly, oh wow, this calendar thing really blew my mind. It took me ages to figure out. Here's how I did it, right? Here's the code I got the calendar, and this is how I pieced it together. I was like, oh, I found this library, right? Great, but we don't need to see, all the code listings in the report. That's totally unnecessary. But if you want to include some samples of some of the complicated bits that you did, here's the search algorithm I used, here's the, that's fine. Do that. All the code? No, we don't need all the code. Don't put it, because obviously you'll be submitting your code separately anyway. We don't need to put it in the report as well. All right? And any kind of diagramming that you do, that's great, it's fantastic. It really helps you with your design, particularly for those of us, most of you who English is a second language. So if you take out the diagram, then you've got to write more. That's harder. So including the diagram means you have to write a bit less, but it doesn't mean you have to write nothing. So you still need to include some explanation of the diagram, but it could be a short explanation. The diagram is doing the most of the work for you. Okay, and you could have a wireframe in your design, and then you have an actual screenshot that you built and then you can see, then when I'm reading it, you can kind of, okay, so there was the design and here was the reality, and they might be a little bit different, and that's fine. Why did you change it? And that's all good. That's what we want to see. It's all part of the process.
Mhm.
Okay, it is a bit daunting. So if you haven't already had the reaction of, oh my God, I'm never going to be able to do this in 10 weeks, that's perfectly normal. But as I will just, and Anna's on my right-hand side. Ta-da. What I will say, and I'd like to end up on this positive note, we have had literally hundreds of students who have completed this project very successfully over the years. They have done so very well. Some people got 41, some people got 83, and obviously all the way in between. But they completed it, and they got through it, and they passed it. So it can be done. It does take time.
Mm-hmm.
Do bear in mind that it's the only thing you're doing now. It is worth 3 times as much as, for example, as my SBIT module. So if you were spending 2.5 hours in class a week for my module, and you also spent a bit of time doing the reports, if you add all that time up together and multiply that by 3, that's how much time you should be spending, right? So that's a lot of time, but you need to parcel that time off. So like Aldana said, if you have a job that you're doing, you need to be realistic. Okay, what days am I working? And maybe you're on a roster that's going to change and you don't know from week to week, but you know roughly how many hours you got. So if I'm working Monday, Wednesday, and Thursday, I need to do my project. Tuesday is my project day, Saturday is my project day. Next week, what 2 days? So I need to spend 2 days on my project because I'm working 3 days. All right. And some people will have an advantage because they might be working less and they can spend more time with their project. You can't control that. You can only control what you do and how well you can do. And the more you can do, every little bit that you get working, every other functionality that you add in, what you need to think to yourself is, great, I've just gained myself some extra marks there, right? The other suggestion I would have is to do your report as you go. So if you make a decision, make a few notes so that when you're writing up your report, you can go, oh yeah, that's why. Because otherwise what happens is you get to the report at the end and you can't remember why you did it. And it's like, oh, I can't really remember. And it's not a great explanation. If you do it at the time, it's much better. All right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. I think we might wrap up there unless anyone has a last question.
Last question, yeah.
Last question.
For the project, in case we don't get this score enough in any subjects, and like we are able to get another final exam or test to make up the marks?
Okay, so there's no exam or test for the project.
No, I mean, I'm not talking about the projects. I'm talking about the exams, not assignments.
For the other subjects.
Yeah.
Okay,
Yes.
So you'll get your results for the other subjects in, oh God, I would have thought early July. Yeah, so you get all your final marks in early July for all your other subjects. If there's anything that you need to repeat, then those repeats will happen over the summer. And you'll be doing it at the same time, those repeats at the same time as you're trying to finish your project, which is not ideal, but we don't control that. So usually it's a repeat assignment, Kelson. There was a couple of subjects you had exams for in semester 1, like web development and databases. So if you failed one of those subjects, you might have to do a repeat exam in August for that. And likewise it was cloud, wasn't it? You had an exam for cloud. So if you fail that, you might have to repeat that in August. But hopefully you don't have that many repeats to do. There was already, I already had put up the repeat for the software development, for example. So that's already been submitted.
Yeah.
So people will get the grades.
When is that going to be out?
all those results will be out in early July, Dermot.
So we expect to get the results in early July and then to August.
Early July, and the repeat. If it's a repeat assignment, it usually happens over July and you submit it in August, and the repeat exams are held in August.
On Ken, the designated supervision.
Yes.
I think, is it compulsory we are there, because like August, my sister is having a wedding, so
We are
think I'll-
asking people to attend at least 5 of them. I think there's 6 or 7 schedules.
5. Okay.
So if you come to 5 of them, that's enough. If you are away, Jonathan, so if you're away, for example, and you say, look, I can't come, but I could do it online,
Yeah.
then we can make an
However-
arrangement for that,
Yeah.
In
if
August,
necessary.
Yeah.
in August we
We don't have much in August. We're nearly finished in August.
just 2 in August,
Okay,
I
yeah,
think.
There's only 2 in
because
August.
I'm really planning to travel like the last week.
There might actually only be
last
1 in
week
August. So
of July.
yeah, it's mostly July, the end of June and into July, because the submission is the 13th of August. So there's really only 1 week in August.
Okay. Thanks.
Okay, guys. That's all. I'm gonna stop the recording there. Marcelo, if you hang on there for a couple of minutes, and Aldana, if you wouldn't mind hanging on. Everyone else,
Yeah, of course.
Everyone else, thank you and goodbye. Make sure you bring questions next week. That's
Next
really
week, yeah.
important, right?
Bye bye.
Thank you. Bye bye, guys.
Bye bye, guys. See you
Thank you,
next
guys.
week.